It began with a smirk, the kind that says, "You don't belong here." Cameras were rolling, lights were hot, and the stage was set for what was meant to be a civil discussion on education policy at a national summit in Washington, D.C. But when Dr. Jill Biden, an experienced educator and First Lady, leaned slightly forward with that half-smile and said, "Maybe we should have an IQ test before we take policy advice from conspiracy theorists," the atmosphere thickened. The words were delivered with polish, but they cut deep, and they were aimed squarely at Robert F. Kennedy Jr., seated just feet away. The audience shifted. Some chuckled nervously, unsure if it was a joke or a jab. Others leaned in, sensing the tension was about to spill. RFK Jr., known for his gravelly voice and controversial stances, didn't blink. He didn't shoot back. Instead, he slowly reached into his inner jacket pocket and unfolded a letter yellowed at the edges. Clearly aged, yet carefully preserved. For a moment, no one knew what to expect. But what came next turned an awkward moment into something unforgettable. "This is a letter from my father, RFK Jr., began, his voice soft but unwavering, written to me 2 weeks before he died." The room stilled. "He told me to never confuse intelligence with conformity, and to never mistake credentials for wisdom. He told me that the world would try to put me in boxes, liberal or conservative, genius or fool, patriot or traitor, and that if I wanted to make a difference, I had to keep thinking for myself." He paused, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. "My father didn't graduate from an Ivy League school. He didn't hold a doctorate, but he stood up to systems that needed challenging. He walked into places where he wasn't welcome. And he taught me that courage isn't about saying the popular thing, it's about saying the necessary thing. Even when you stand alone." Jill's smile faded, her expression shifting subtly to one of discomfort, maybe even regret. The cameras were still rolling, but the show had transformed. This wasn't about credentials anymore. It was about heart, history, legacy. RFK Jr. continued, revealing that he had, in fact, undergone a battery of cognitive and psychological tests years ago. Not because anyone had challenged him to bet, because he'd struggled with dysphonia and had once feared early onset neurological issues. The tests revealed a high-functioning mind above 130 IQ, solid memory retention, exceptional pattern recognition, but he'd never publicized those results. "Why would I?" he said quietly. "I didn't come into public life to be validated. I came to speak for people who feel unheard." Then came the twist no one saw coming. "Dr. Biden," he said, gently but firmly, "I know you believe in education. I respect that. I admire the work you've done for community colleges and underserved students, but intelligence can't be measured on a chart. It shows up in different ways in mechanics who fix planes, in farmers who predict the weather by smell, and yes, even in those of us who've been labeled crazy for asking inconvenient questions." The audience, once silent, began to murmur. Applause started, slowly at first, then grew. Not everyone agreed with RFK Jr.'s politics. Many still didn't. But in that moment, people weren't clapping for policy. They were clapping for vulnerability, for raw honesty, for a man who took a public insult and turned it into a moment of profound reflection. Jill Biden, to her credit, stood and extended her hand. "Robert," she said, "thank you for sharing. That I spoke too soon." They shook hands. A political clash had turned into something bigger, a reminder that beneath titles, rivalries, and televised talking points, there are still human beings trying to make sense of the world. The event ended, not with sound bites, but with silence, the thoughtful kind. Reporters didn't rush out the door, they lingered. Students who had attended expecting a debate walked away with something deeper. The realization that we often try to measure each other with tools too small for the job. An IQ score can't measure empathy. A diploma can't define character. And sometimes, the wisest voices come from those who've spent a lifetime being misunderstood. The story went viral, not for its controversy, but for its humility. In an age of constant shouting, Two public figures had shown the rare courage to listen. And that was the real surprise, not the letter, not the IQ results, but the simple, powerful reminder that human dignity cannot be challenged away.